Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics, brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the artist of Bitter Root at Image Comics. It's Sanford Greene. Thanks for coming on, Sanford.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
So the last time we talked, Sanford, was right before Bitter Root came out, and I'm curious, like, how have things been since we last talked? How was the first arc of Bitter Root for you?
Well, it was pretty special, man. I feel like we're doing, all of us, myself, David Walker, and Chuck Brown. We're doing the work of our career, man. I mean, specifically me and David, and in terms of what we're doing, in terms of the I guess the way the book is doing with fans, it's off the charts. Just thinking about over the last year and a half, we've gotten so many opportunities, man. I think at the beginning we were a little nervous, like any creator, thinking about launching their personal projects, and no more than maybe a few weeks after the first issue sold out, had to go to reprint. And then we started getting inquiries from stores all over the country to come do signings. We got these crazy artists doing variant covers that sold out, everyone from Mike Mignola to Kevin Nolan to
Bill Sienkiewicz. Yeah,
Dennis Cowan, and then we got these incredible female illustrators to come in and do variant covers for us as well. And that opened another door for us. And needless to say, by issues 3 and 4, oh, and not to mention, we also have these essays in the back of each issue from scholars from all over the country. And it just opened another avenue. So we kept unlocking. It's kind of like stretch goals in a sense with kids, something where you unlock one goal and you achieve that, and then you unlock another goal. And it's not even so much that we were trying to have quote unquote stretch goals. It's just that we felt like these things were natural fits, getting these great, legendary illustrators to do covers, getting these incredible female diverse voices to do artwork for us, getting these scholars. So we felt like the story that we had allowed us to have so many different avenues, natural avenues to partake in. And like I said earlier, it was off the charts. The response from fans, and we brought in new converts, which is always the end goal for creators in this industry, is to bring in new readers. And yeah, man, we were we got nominated for a few awards. We got nominated for Book of the Year, a new comic series at the Ringo Awards, new comic series for an Eisner. We got nominated for that. We got Book of the Year by Entertainment Weekly, which was pretty awesome. And yeah, man. So we're just trying to, at the end of the day, we're just trying to tell a great story. And not to mention, I guess we can talk about this little bit of news where we got a movie deal here.
Right.
Yeah, with some guy named Coogler. He does independent films. He did
like Fruitvale Station and everything.
Yeah. I can't think of anything else he's done.
No.
No, none whatsoever. No, but all jokes aside, just having Coogler was so surreal. He actually was a fan of what we were doing. He was a fan of the comic. He actually went to, there's a store in Burbank, House of Secrets.
Mm-hmm.
He visited that store on a regular, and he would ask about the comic, about our series. So that was pretty surreal, just knowing that he already knew who we were and was a fan of what we're doing. And uh, he wanted to be the person responsible for taking our idea to the big screen. So yeah, the last year and a half is just it's just been incredible and a special ride for us.
Yeah. I have to say, so I've been visiting with you at cons for years, ever since you first came on the podcast, ever since we first chatted. And when I saw you at New York Comic Con this year, it was after the Legendary deal. It was after Ryan Coogler came out as like the producer of Bitterroot. And I'm not saying it's because of that, but I will say like post Bitterroot, it seems like even just like your con presence, like the level of attention you get, like took a step up. It seemed like there was whenever I came by and you were there was a crowd, and whenever you weren't there was people wondering where you were, and it was really awesome to see that, because it seemed like it was almost like you were tapping into a moment with Bitterroot. It was like it was speaking to people in a way that I'm not saying your other projects didn't necessarily, but it was connecting with people in a really like I don't know, significant way. It was interesting. Did you feel that as you went to cons since Bitterroot came out?
Absolutely. I think Mark Miller, if I can tell this story, Mark Miller, he reached out to me, I think about 6 months prior, or maybe 4 months, somewhere around there, prior. And he was interested in me doing something for him. And needless to say, I was not aware of the Netflix opportunity that he had. And I had known, I don't, maybe I would have thought differently. But the one thing he said, because I told him about um, the opportunity that I had, because we were coming off of Power Man and Iron Fist, and we had this opportunity to possibly do something that I felt was going to be pretty special with the Bitterroot concept. I told him what the concept was. He thought it was absolutely fascinating, and he got excited. He said to me, and I quote, "You would have to be out of your mind, your bleeping mind, if you don't take this opportunity, because you will understand the true nature of what this is all about when you start to, develop your own property, your own ideas." And man, I think about that quite often, looking back, on our journey in just a few short years. And yeah, it's just one of those things where, uh, like you said, you see the response from fans, and it's definitely has been more than I've ever had career wise. And I said to myself, man, I should have did this sooner. Maybe I would have been different. But no, I think all timing, everything has its reason. I'm glad I went on the journey that I've been on, and yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. So it really helps to put all of this attention that we're getting, is it puts it in perspective, in a good perspective.
Does that change things at all for you and David and Chuck in terms of, I don't know, how you approach the book, how you look at it, or anything like that? Or is it really just, when it comes to the comic itself, it's pretty much business as usual?
Um, I will say this in full disclosure. I think, with me and David, we've been in the industry for a while. Chuck is up and coming, and so his perspective might be a little different than it is a little different than ours. And because he still has some aspirations of, you know, working for the big two, and doing more work for the big two. And I think we're kind of okay. We I think we've done, for the most part, everything we wanted to do. My childhood character was, Power Man. I shared that before in the previous um, interviews, and so outside of that, everything to me then was kind of, this is cool, but it's not necessarily the end all be all. And so this bitter root thing, really, I've never put this much effort into anything,
Yeah.
into any of the, not saying that it never happened before, because again, I didn't understand what I had before. Or at least I did. I thought I did. When you're working for the big two, you're putting everything you have, but at the end of the day, it's still not your toys. And, you have decisions that you're excited about, and the powers that be may say, we're thinking a different direction for this character, and you have to adjust. Here with our own properties, is pretty much the sky's the limit. What do you want to do? I don't know. Let's throw in, you know, some character that comes from Africa, and he is the great grandfather of one of the first slave owners, and he has some kind of magical power, and he's a god, and he can whatever. I'm just throwing whatever we throw out there. We literally take it into consideration, and we find a way to make it work. So it definitely builds. I think it builds more um, enthusiasm in a lot of ways, because the door doesn't close so quickly on your own ideas. Like, we literally have books of different ideas that we can incorporate, possibly. One that I'm super excited about, we're going to be doing as we wrap up this second arc. The arc hasn't started yet, but we're ahead enough to where, well, I'm sorry, the second arc has started, but we're ahead enough to where we're going to be wrapping it up here in the next month or so.
Wow.
By the time the second issue, well, by the time issue 7 drops, we should be closing out. And that's the other great thing, is that our schedule, I think that's probably, and it may even be the greatest thing, is that our schedule, like, we literally just can work our own schedules out, and for us, that works for us. And I'm like, duh, that's why, all the creators of note, they go and they do their own creator own projects, because it's so gratifying, not just creatively, but just from a morale standpoint. You don't have these deadlines, this hammering you down. You don't have all this strenuous continuity that you have to account for. You have all this, you had all those things that you have to adhere to. So it makes the work very fulfilling.
Yeah.
At the same time, we have our you have your pros, and then you have your cons. The cons honestly would be just the mere fact that this is our own thing, and it's like, when it doesn't work, or if it doesn't go according to plan, or what have you, if we don't execute it in a certain way, we can't go, well, that's corporate, that's deadlines, that's the powers that be. Everything is on us. So there is an added pressure of the ownership and everyone looking directly to us. There's no one else um, to view when you're working on this, on your own stuff. So that that builds somewhat of a pressure, but that pressure is not necessarily bad.
Hmm.
Um, you know, the old phrase about pressure either can bust pipes or make diamonds, and we're trying to make some diamonds here. So I welcome I welcome the added pressure right now.
I will say, like, one thing that's interesting of what you said was, with the schedule stuff, and the fact that you all will already be done with the arc by the time issue 7 comes out. I am interested in how the gap works for you, because the last issue 5 was released in March of 2019, and then there was the Blood Red Summer Special in July, which you did a bit for. And then the issue 6 is coming out in February. So when you all are trying to get ahead and everything like that, I guess two questions. One, do you give yourself a break in between arcs, like an actual break? And two, at what point do you start jumping into it? Because I will say, like, issue 6, like, there's this action sequence with Blink in it, and it feels like, I don't know. Like, it's weird that my brain thinks this. I'm like, I feel like this is like Sanford having about as much fun as he's had drawing comics ever. And it feels like you can really really give it all, as opposed to like when you're doing like Power Man and Iron Fist. As much as you enjoyed that, it's a lot. It can be punishing. So does it give you a lot of space to be able to figure things out as much as you possibly can and would like to on a normal basis?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And kind of backtracking there with the time space gap between, we we're in an interesting place here, with this particular project, because we we're reaching audiences that aren't traditional comic goers,
Sure.
fans, Wednesday warriors, if you will. We're reaching scholars from every walk of life. We're reaching uh, schools of different levels, everything from middle schools to high schools to colleges. Um, we our book is being used for curriculum in certain high schools, which is really in colleges, which is really surreal.
Mm-hmm.
And we're being, again, like I said earlier, we're being um, inquired to come out. There's inquiries for us coming out to speak to these institutions and at these different events. Um, and we're selling tons of books in these spaces,
Yeah.
right? And what ends up happening is that takes time, and we can take 2, possibly even 3 months of just doing that.
Mm-hmm.
By the time when the trade came out, we were in a place where there was a lot of issues where it was a lot of issues where we we just had people, or events, I should say, that reached out to us, everywhere from the librarian conference, to I went to this event called Afrotech, which was pretty insane. And these audiences and these spaces are very unique. And again, not traditional spaces for comics, but it fit, it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, way better than we thought. So we spent a lot of time doing that, and we're creating these spaces that are honestly um, ongoing. We have events planned this year that's going to be pretty spectacular. So I say all that to say we have we wanted to start the second arc sooner.
Mm-hmm.
We understand how the trajectory of the industry goes. If you're not on the shelf um, for a certain amount of time, fans lose interest. Mainly the retailers, they kind of lose interest. But I think because we had this interesting dichotomy of just these other audiences, and it built even more momentum. Usually, it kind of goes the other way,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, okay, it's if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. But I think when the trade dropped, it just built even more momentum. So we ended up having to spend more time than we thought we needed to adhere to all those requests. And once we got the second arc going, we were off to the races. But yeah, I know I was just kind of answering some of the, because I know that there's been some uh feedback about, oh man, this took a while to come back. And honestly, is in all truthfulness, we were trying to navigate this new territory. It's
Yeah.
it's it's kind of unconventional, right? It's not one of those spaces where you just go to a local comic shop and do a signing. We're going to universities and book fairs and all these other speaking engagements that are non-traditional. So just trying to navigate and figure those things out. Like I said, once we got our sea legs under us, I think we're in a pretty good place to where the next arc won't be as big of a gap. for us, because we know that the demand is there, and it's very enthusiastic, and we're very aware of the the timing. And the other thing too is we started thinking a lot about, we were going to try to launch in November of last year, and I started looking at the dates and everything that I just shared, all the stuff that we had to do. Still, we were still on the road, if you will, doing signings and stuff like that, and it wasn't conducive to that schedule. So I started looking forward, and I saw that, you know what, we have February. Why don't we just launch it then? January was kind of a wash because, at the beginning of the year, people were just trying to get back, on schedule with everything, life in general. February, this seemed logical. And it was, Black History Month, which is something that we saw as a great opportunity as well, because we've got this audience now. We have this audience that's really in tune to what we're doing, and we felt like, wow, we can really, we can make an impact even more so. So it just seemed logical to come out, to relaunch the series in this month.
And now, a quick word from our sponsor. I want to take a quick second to give a shout out to my friends at TKO Studios. TKO is a new comics publisher doing things a little differently, with each of their titles being binge released in trade paperback and 6-issue collector's box sets at the same time. Their second wave of comics dropped recently, including one of my comics of the year in Jeff Lemire and Gabriel Hernandez Walta's Sentient, Roxane Gay and Ming Doyle's The Banks, and more, as well as gems from their first wave, like Garth Ennis and Steve Epting's remarkable war story, Sarah. Each is available now at tkopresents.com in trade, single-issue box sets, and digital release. Want to check these comics out before you order? Well, I have great news for you. If you visit tkopresents.com, you can read the first issues of each title for free right now. If you like what you read and you're a retailer, reach out directly to them at sales@tkopresents.com or go to tkopresents.com/vendors to order. TKO offers a 50% order discount as well as free shipping in the United States, a deal that's pretty hard to beat. Just a reader? That's cool too. You can order whichever comics you like directly off their site as well. Visit tkopresents.com to learn more today. And now, back to the show. I mean, it's really weird. Well, actually, but before I move on, I'm just going to give a quick spiel about what the book's about. It's, I don't know, I was trying to genre it, and it's kind of tough to do because it's fantastical, but it's also kind of an action adventure, but it's also a family drama. It's all these different things, but it's set during the Harlem Renaissance, in which a family is attempting to save or a historic family who has always fought monsters is attempting to save New York from monsters who are effectively turned that way by racism. It's just it's hate driving them. It's an amazing book. It's Chuck Brown. It's David Walker. It was Rico Renzi. Now it's going to be Sophie Dodgson. And Clayton Cowles. I don't want to forget Clayton Cowles. But I think one of the interesting things, and honestly, it's I could be completely wrong about this, but I feel like your gap kind of worked out for you in your favor for two reasons. One, it gave you time to kind of build up these other areas, because the thing is I don't know, comics are, I'm a huge advocate for comic shops, but at the same time, for a book like yours, especially given the fact it has history baked into it, that makes it interesting to universities, that makes it interesting to libraries, that makes it interesting to a lot of different places that maybe your average Image kind of sci-fi fantasy type book wouldn't normally connect with. And then the other thing that I think is kind of weirdly fortuitous for you, and maybe you disagree with this, is the Watchmen show came out and there was a lot of bitter roots in that too, down to the fact that there was even the Tulsa, race riots from 1919 as a plot point in it, just like it is in Bitterroot. And I think that's really interesting. I feel like in some ways this gap has set you guys up for a really nice potential boost coming into it, and the thing is it also gives you time to do your best work, which I think is hugely advantageous too.
Right. And I agree with everything that you said. I mean, to your point of the Watchmen show with Regina King, interesting enough, she tweeted out um, when the show first launched about the um, the Tulsa, um, the historical event that took place in Tulsa
Right.
and Oklahoma, and someone I think immediately, because people were responding to that moment in history of, oh my God, I thought that was just a part of the show. I didn't realize that actually happened in in real life, in history, which was, and so there was this conversation happening. I'm looking at it in real time on Twitter with
Yeah.
people jumping in and commenting on, some of the comments of people not being aware of that time in history. And like within minutes, people started chiming in. Well, if you guys don't know, you need to look at this book called Bitter Root. It's based on their whole story is based on that moment, or part of that part of their story is based on that moment. And it was kind of surreal just to kind of see just how far it just helped us to realize how far reaching our project has been thus far. Um, because we know that this industry is finite, and that's not taking, it's not a knock per se. It's just what it is. It's like you have to do a lot of legwork to expand and go beyond the comic audience. So we our initial focus is the comic art audience because that's our audience. That's where we came from. But it kind of naturally progressed into that because there's some crossover there where there are people that are historians and people that are in tune to uh, this culture in the sense of diverse cultures, and they are fans of just comics in general. And so they start to speak about it, and it brings attention to these folks that aren't necessarily, like I said, traditional goers. So again, that that crossover, people that watched the show, watched the Watchmen, and that's funny. I said watch the Watchmen, but they, they were fans of the history of it, and now their doors are being opened to here's stories that are being told through the lens of those moments in history. So now again, like you said, it's just another opportunity to grow our project.
Yeah. You guys are just dying for somebody. I mean, if I were you, I'd be like, can somebody with like New York Times write an article about if you liked Watchmen, read Bitter Root? Because I'm like, it's right there. It's right there.
Right. Well, we have that. I think I'll be honest with you. Man, we had the Washington Post, we've had New York Times, we've had Entertainment Weekly, we've had a lot of
Big support.
people doing articles based on what you just said. So we're out there. Like I said, we're doing what we do,
Yeah.
um, and it's gaining that kind of attention.
Good. Good. Well, let's talk about the everything that's going on with the second arc a little bit. I am one of the things I'm curious about is because you and David have established history working together. It's two writers. You're more. I mean, I know that you're not you are an artist, but you're a storyteller. You have a lot of insight and perspective on everything you want to do. How do the three of
Mhm.
you work together as you were putting this second arc together? Was there like a real kind of powwow going into it, or how do you guys work?
Um, we we honestly, I think because we're all passionate. We all have um, our viewpoints that we want to portray in this story, in this concept, and it's three. So it's like if it's 50-50, it's kind of like you versus me kind of thing, or me, my thoughts and your thoughts, and trying to come together. Having that third person, it's it honestly kind of it's like majority,
Hmm.
in a sense. Like I may have something that they may not agree with or want to do right now, and vice versa. It's like, what side does the majority fall under? But that being said, also we have our new editor who I'm super excited about, Shelley Bond, who used to be um, a luminary at Vertigo at DC, and she launched a couple of years ago. She launched an imprint over at IDW, and she is one of the and I'm not saying this because she will listen to this podcast. She knows I'm doing this interview, but she's probably one of the most um, I've done more working under her than I have with any other editor. Like she's really great at steering you in the right direction and letting you do your thing at the same time. Um, there's other great editors out there, don't get me wrong, but I think the way that she handles like everything, our ideas, how we want to go about portraying those ideas, and then putting that on a schedule that doesn't overwhelm us to the point to where we can't be really creative and exploratory or anything like that. She's great. So her coming in to help guide us through the second arc moving forward, it has been a godsend. So yeah, we're doing I think we're doing okay now. We got our sea legs. I think with traveling and signings and appearances and all that stuff and trying to come back together, we needed someone like her that could steer us in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, and going back to the scheduling thing, I think one of the things that's really important for me as like a reader, like, are you familiar with Rob Guillory's Farmhand at all?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So one of my favorite things that he did on that book, and I've brought this up on a number of times, so Rob definitely knows I'm a super fan of this idea, was he actually put together kind of like a farmer's calendar on the back of each issue showing when each arc was going to come out so that you knew, even if there was a gap in between arcs, that there was a predictability to it, that you knew that if you go on this Wednesday that you will get issue 8 or whatever. And that's
right,
one thing that I think is really nice about the fact that you're all that far enough ahead that there's a predictability to the cadence once this arc starts. Like, so it's going up, it's coming out the Wednesday before this podcast goes up, the issue number 6 is, but then from there it's just like, it's coming out in March, coming out in April, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like
yeah,
there's a predictability to it, and that's, that's why, not only is it good to have a gap to work ahead, but also it's good to have an editor like Shelley who, I mean, Shelley is like probably, a short list, maybe Mount Rushmore editor in comics because her and Karen Berger were Vertigo comics. And that's incredible. I mean, that's tying into that. So Sophie Dodgson's your new colorist. Shelley's your new editor. Why did you want to, why were they brought in for this new arc?
Um, simply put, they had the skill set that we needed, and we were very intentional about trying to get female voices involved with this, because we know that there's a contingency that really is um, that's the end goal. People want to see and hear from female creators, even more so now more than ever. And we were, like I said, we were intentional. Now, if it didn't work out, obviously we would go with who we needed to go with, but it just all the stars aligned. Shelley was one of the people that, like I said, I worked with her for years in years past, and I've always had an incredible, pleasant experience working with her. She demands a lot from her creators, but she also allows you to have fun, have a good time with what you're doing, and because she lifts you up when you need to be lifted up, in terms of what you're doing and what she's enjoying, and she also at the same time says, okay, let's take this to the next level. Let's go higher with that. Sophie, she honestly was a pleasant surprise, to be honest with you. I put out a feeler, if you will, on social media about female colorists, looking for female colorists. It's just something about their sensibilities to color that I love, because it's funny because every colorist, not every colorist, but a lot of the colorists in the industry today, I may not know that they're female. I just see great color and they just happen to be female. I'm like, okay, there's something to this, maybe. I don't know. It's like they just have a good color sense. And it's one of those things where it's yeah. So yeah, and Sophie, she just reached out to me, and through I think it was Twitter. She said, "Hey, I heard you were looking for colorists. Here's my portfolio." And again, I'm looking at I'm looking at tons of different portfolios. I can see what editors go through. Um, there's some, if you're not paying attention, if you're not looking at things with fresh eyes, you can miss an incredible, diamond in the rough kind of thing. And I almost missed her because she contacted me on like I think it was like Instagram Messenger, which was I don't do a lot of messaging on that platform. Mainly just it may be Facebook or Twitter. I'm kind of old school.
Hmm.
Sad to say that Facebook makes me old school, but but so that I almost missed. But then I saw her work. I checked it out, and it was in the vein of what I was looking for. But I think what made it even more, I connected with where I think she could go and what her potential was just a conversation that we had. And it wasn't any. It's just she just seemed like it just seemed like she was very grounded in where she is and what she needed to do um, in terms of going where the book needed to go, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Totally.
Because artists, they love to uh, everyone wants to put their stamp on things, and colorists they have the same mindset, which is fine. But I knew that we were kind of in a situation where we needed to get someone on board fairly soon, sooner than later at that time, and we needed someone that could adhere to what we needed, specifically what I needed, because I see my stuff in a totally different way, color wise. Like I have this thing in my head, and sometimes it is challenging to say, "Oh no, do it like this," and they're not me. They're not in my head. So they have to literally, you know, sit with me and look at every page and go over every page in order to fully understand. But I think she was in a place to where she was willing to do what needed to be done, if it meant that to at least start. And once she understood where I wanted to go, what I was trying to portray from my own vision, once I sat with her, it was it was off to the races, and she has been knocking it out of the park ever since.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm a Rico Renzi is my guy. I love Rico, but
Yeah.
I gotta say Sophie's doing a great job, and like she's complimenting your work in a very nice way. It's fantastical where it needs to be, but it's grounded where it needs to be as well. And I think that kind of fits the vibe of the second arc, because I think it's really interesting I mean, I've only read the first issue of the second arc, but it feels like it's both getting smaller and bigger simultaneously, because it starts with the family tree and showing all that and showing how everybody connects and getting more into the family history. And then, but also introducing Adro, the big bad, perhaps, let's say.
Big bad.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I don't know. I mean, like that's such a delicate push pull. It's like you're trying to get bigger without losing your identity, which is really this family. And I think you guys do a great job in the second, or in the first issue of the second arc. I'm very interested to see where it goes from here because, you know, big bads can dominate.
Right, right. Big bass can dominate. That almost sounds like a segue for basketball, but we can save it.
Oh, we're definitely going to save that. But you know, I did want to ask. I skipped over this in the gap part, but I did want to ask about why you all decided to do the Blood Red Summer one shot because to me it does two things. One, it gives you something in between. It gives you it was a free issue, so you could get on Comixology and you could just read it. And so it's like both a gateway, but it also expands on the universe for new readers or for existing readers. But also, you know, like I said, it's giving something in between that gap between issues. So why did you all decide that that was something that you wanted to include in the Bitterroot tapestry?
Um, it's everything that you just said. We knew that we had all this other these other avenues we needed to focus on to get the book out there and to get things and expand our audience. And that took some time, but we wanted to at the same time have more new content, have new content out there for our ongoing fans, our current fans, and the Red Summer was at the top of the list to do this anthology, and it was great to have this vast um, creative teams, I should say, doing their takes on our characters. So that also, again, that brought more attention to our book because we had these creators who are known for whatever projects that they do, and now they're doing something based on what we created. So that brings their audience to us, and then, like you said, it kind of filled in the gap.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we were able to do some things with that, expanding the universe. We had some other things in store coming up this year. We're thinking about doing a like a family tree book, that kind of
Nice,
thing, a family photo album. We had this idea. I'm kind of giving you some exclusives right now, things
nice.
that we think would be kind of cool that would fit the dynamics of the family and the overall story.
Well, that's one of the interesting things about Bitterroot is, you know, you mentioned Mike Mignola earlier as somebody who did a variant, and I'm not saying that your book is Hellboy, but I think one of the things that your book does is it gives you a lot of opportunities to tell ancillary stories and to like dig into other parts of like you can like you know in the Blood Red special or summer special there was like the story about Blink and in her you know friend on the other side as they go hunt Janu and you start to see that it's not just the Harlem crew but it's other you know there's other families that are involved with it so it starts expanding the universe or like you know like telling the history of Tulsa and everything like that so you can see where these characters came from. There's all these different places that you can expand and like I don't know you can make the universe a lot more rich while also kind of giving you a bit of a breather because you just did the one story in there was like Carrie Randolph and Daniel Lish and etc that contributed to it so it's kind of like having your cake and eating it too a little bit.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Our goal was to do everything like you just mentioned, is to have these diverse voices to their takes, and then give me a bit of a breather because that first arc was definitely. I think I put more work. Obviously, with any creator, they would put their best foot forward on anything that they've created, and that was my first time really seeing and experiencing what that was like. So yeah, it was emotionally draining, more so emotional, like I said, than physical, because there were things that I had to research that I was learning as I went, and it was very enlightening, and I had to take a pause I needed some time to really take it all in, to see that, wow, we just did something here. At least the first arc, we did something that is a whole new territory for all of us, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, just two more questions on Bitterroot. One I wanted to ask about was related to that. You know, you went through that first arc. It was a lot. It was probably as much as you've ever put into in a single arc. Do you find, like, when you had that space in between arcs, that maybe you looked at how you approached that and perhaps thought of different ways you could approach things to save yourself a bit? Or is it really like you just got to save up that energy so you can do the exact same thing again?
The latter,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. It's like, man, what do I need to do to do more than what I did in the first arc? Like, I'm working on again the second arc right now, and literally have to put away the first arc, um, and not look at it because it'll be just this thing where I'm like, oh, I did that so well. Why can't I do it now? And it's like I have to, not get so caught up in it. But there are things that I'm doing now that I look back on the first arc, and I'm like, man, I wish I was able to do this what I'm doing now on the
Yeah.
first arc. So it's a lot of back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel pretty good about where things are going right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did the last question I wanted to ask about Bitterroot was you have some. There's always interesting variants, but issue 6 has some particularly interesting ones because you did a My Neighbor Totoro variant. Chris Brunner, I think it's Brunner, and Enrico Renzi did a Do the Right Thing variant for number 6. And I think both of those are really interesting, specifically because of what they are. They're homages. They're like shouts out to other properties. And I think you did a Purple Rain one too before. Is part of that trying to speak to an audience who might not check it out otherwise? You're trying to attract it through other properties, or is it just because they feel of the same family to what you're doing, or what is it?
All of the above.
Yeah.
Uh, it's it's targeting those audiences that would truly appreciate it, which is a pretty big audience. But again, interesting enough, a lot of that those audiences aren't the comic audience. Like
Right.
the comic audience, again, there's crossover, but those specific covers that you just mentioned, the Totoro, obviously that's manga, so you're going to, or at least anime, and so you're going to get that. That's an easy enough one in the comic genre, but then you start expanding, and you're doing these covers like we're paying homage to um, classic black films,
Mm-hmm.
or at least within the last 30 years, right?
Right.
Those are the ones that more of our generation. And everything from Do the Right Thing, like you said, Purple Rain, Harlem Nights, Juice, those different films. So we're doing that. And again, um, that's mainly because I am trying to be intentional to reach more abroad, and those audiences, they appreciate comics, but they're not buying them. They're not purchasing them. So if we can get them to see this thing, something that they're really familiar with, and something that they also appreciate from afar, because a lot of these folks that would appreciate those covers and they're really into and they respond to those variants, they go to see the films, and they know every character, they know everything dealing with TV. Again, this going back to the whole Watchmen situation. I don't know these people, but I can almost put a hard dollar on it. I can put a dollar bill on the situation that most of the people that were chiming in with the whole Watchmen and the Tulsa thing, they're not comic book people. They just watch the television shows. So it was just interesting to see that and think, man, what do I need to do, or what do we need to do to get them to not only buy our book, but buy comics in general, or it doesn't have to be Wednesday Warrior type things, but just get them involved, get them like we can be somewhat of a conduit to kind of get them charged enough to go, wow, what else is out there?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's not just self-serving that we're doing this variant cover venture. Is to really just kind of open the door to hopefully more of a diverse audience.
Yeah, I mean, all the stuff that you guys do, that's what I really appreciate about Bitterroot. I mean, amongst other things, is there's all the back matter, all of the variants that you're doing. You can see a real intentionality behind it. Like there's a lot of thought behind trying to connect people who aren't necessarily typically comic readers, and just everything you just said. But it's nice because a lot of times it's like, oh, you're going to do an homage cover because it's cool, and who doesn't like Totoro or whatever. But there's like, and I do love Totoro, but there's like,
I was going to say there is that too. I mean, come on, man. I know what I was very aware that Totoro is probably one of the most beloved, animes ever. So
yeah. And you did a very good job. I have to admit, I did not ever expect a Totoro from Sanford Greene. But I will say, in a weird way, it is like very fitting for your guys' world, because there's all these like creatures and everything like that, like Uncle Enoch's like weird dog android monster friends. Oh, yeah. I love those guys, but they also feel like something that you could see in like a really weird Studio Ghibli movie. Which is great. I mean, I would probably buy a plush of one of those if you ever did it.
You know what's funny? We thought about that. We thought, what can we create that would open the audience? Again, we're thinking about expanding audiences here.
Mm-hmm.
What would be something that would be attractive to a female audience, or audiences that love things like, figures or plushies? And so we came up with this imp idea, and there's a reason why that they're half. Some you see some with mechanical appendages and stuff. It's you'll find out what happened to some of those characters, or a lot of those imps moving forward, and it gets pretty interesting with those imps moving forward as well.
I'm excited to read it, but all right. Now we're going to close. For listeners that have no interest in Sanford and I talking about basketball, we are now going to talk about basketball, because we always do. Yep. All right, so we're recording this on Monday, February 17th. Last night was the All-Star game for the NBA. The NBA All-Star game changed its format completely. Part of it was the fourth quarter was in an effort to, actually the whole night was really an effort to honor Kobe Bryant after his passing. And we talked about it a little bit before. I shared my feelings on it. What did you think of the new All-Star game format?
I literally stopped working last night to watch that game, and it was pretty awesome. I was standing up, of all things, and I think part of it too is, let's be honest, it had more of a meaning because it was honoring Kobe. So you had that, overarching intention or purpose behind it. And so it made it, and plus I'm a LeBron guy. So it was like, come on, man. And I have a theory about, I think we were talking off air about, why it was so intense in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I think it had a lot to do with the Kobe thing, but I think having kids there added an extra dimension to it. You had the blue team and the red team, and you had these hundreds and hundreds of kids, and you're trying to win for them. I really think that they were, you could see the look they kept flashing to the stands, to where you were looking at the kids. Kids were like super nervous and excited and all that cool stuff. And I think that all that, the combination of all those things has made it that much more of an intense game and a meaningful game.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly thought we were going to get a technical last night. Like when Kyle Lowry got that, I think it was right after he got that offensive foul on James Harden when he was about to shoot the three to win it. And then everyone went, actually, no, it was the tie up. I think they had tied up Pascal Siakam, and like Chris Paul was going bananas. And Chris Paul is kind of intense, anyways. Period. But at the same time, it was just wild watching that. I was like, I was kind of cooking dinner at the same time, but I kept like walking away from dinner and just like standing in front of the TV, being like, "What is happening? This is insane." I will say one thing that I think that they should do in a future version of this format is it can't end on free throws, because that was a bit of a bummer. Although you could tell. So that was another thing I was going to mention to you, and I was curious on your perspective on this. I mentioned to you before we started recording that everyone was playing much more intense defense than they normally would, even in a normal game. Like James Harden in the All-Star game was more intense at defense than during a Rockets game. Now that's not hard, but at the same time, it was significant. But the other thing is I think people were genuinely nervous. Like Anthony Davis was nervous shooting those free throws at the end.
Oh yeah, yeah. He said he missed it on purpose, but I don't believe that. I was
No,
like, dude, you missed that. That pressure was that pressure. I think it would have honestly. He showed me something, because you missed that first one. That makes it even worse. To
the
more
pressure.
pressure to do the second. So yeah, I mean, he showed me a little something last night, and I think and hear me when I say this. I'm not trying to apologize for LeBron or whatever you want to call it, give him. But I think the mere fact that he showed that he wanted the ball more, he gets criticized for he doesn't want to take the last shot, or he doesn't, whatever. He got them 1 point closer to the end, right? And he
Hmm.
kept attacking Giannis. That block that Giannis hit,
Incredible.
because he went at Giannis. I thought he would have did he usually does a step back jumper, kind of fadeaway jumper thing. He went at him, and I'm like, you know what? That's the LeBron. Get get blocked, get knocked down, whatever. But I think him doing that showed that he was gonna. And I don't know. I think last night too. I think last night was a tune up for everyone. I think
Hmm.
everyone's they're ready for the second half of the season to start now, because that was like we everybody wants it. I think this is an extra meaning behind everything, because of Kobe. And I just think that it's whatever you agree with or disagree with when it comes to LeBron, when he steps on that floor, everything changes.
Yeah.
Everything changes. Like, especially the team that he's on. It's like they can be lousy. The minute he steps on the court, everyone just turns it on, or at least they try harder, or whatever you want to call it. So, um, yeah, the second half of the season is definitely going to be special.
Yeah, I thought it was one of my favorite parts, is especially at the end, was when you could just tell like everyone cleared out and like it was LeBron, Giannis, and like that was, I mean, that's like everything you want out of the All-Star game. And like especially I also thought it was really funny how like poor Kemba was just getting hunted over and over and over. Like LeBron was getting he would have God, I think Harden was getting guarded by Kemba, and he'd come over and he would do a pick so he could get him switched over on Kemba, and then he would just blow by him and try to dunk. But then Giannis would like Inspector Gadget arms him on a block, and
Oh my God, yeah, that dude is such a freak of nature.
I was just gonna say it's funny because it reminds me of there's a God, I don't remember what movie it was. It was a Batman movie, and oh no, I think it was like Catwoman disappeared on Batman in like the Dark Knight Rises or whatever, and he like turns around and he's like, oh, so that's what that's like when she like disappears before he turns around. I feel like that was
Yeah,
probably how LeBron felt, because I mean, the greatest chase down block in NBA history was when he blocked Iguodala in the
yeah,
NBA Finals in 2016, I
yeah,
think it was, and like I can't think of a single time I've ever seen somebody chase down block LeBron.
yeah, yeah. You're right. I mean, usually with him being there, and I think part of it, even with no, it wasn't that shot. I think it was a shot before where LeBron attacked the rim, and he got it. It was partial block. But I think there was a foul there as well. He almost made the shot. He adjusted like three times. He went up, then he went under, and then he tried to extend. And I'm like, good Lord, man. It's like he's 36 years old, 36, right? And he's doing stuff like this. It's like, oh my God, man. He's still again, I know there's going to be folks out there that's going to have something to say about my LeBron isms, but
It's just Ramon. Who cares?
right. If you have something to say, come see me at a con and say it to my face. How about that? But other than that, but yeah, it was an awesome game, and yeah, man, like I said, second half of the season is going to be pretty bonkers.
So, just two more basketball questions. I did want to ask. So you don't have a team. You have a team named LeBron, and he's on
Like
the
last
Lake.
night,
What's that?
King LeBron. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like last night, King LeBron and whatnot. Yeah.
So but that makes you a Lakers fan this year. Do you think? I'm curious. Do you think the Lakers should be the favorite for the title going into the second half?
Um, you mean overall or just in the West?
Overall, I mean, like I imagine. I mean, it's to me, it's them, the Bucks, and the Clippers.
Well, here's the thing. I'm just the Celtics are like they just they're around, man. They're always around. I
Right.
don't care who you put in the lineup. They're always around. They're well coached. Um, that game. Oh, that was the other thing too. That game with the I don't know if you saw the Clippers playing Boston right before the All Star break. That game was intense. It went to two overtimes,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, oh my! You could feel like I think if it maybe that might have been the beginning of the second half.
Yeah.
Um, like I said, I think Boston they're pretty pesty, man. They're always around. They're well coached. They have a pretty solid overall team, man. There's no weak links per se. They got at any given night someone could rip off 30
Yeah.
on
Their
that
starting
team.
five
So
is crazy.
yeah, and they're like the Clippers, man. It's like the Clippers are kind of the same way where you got some great overall team ball and they're well coached. That game, that overtime game, double overtime game was pretty intense with the Lakers and I'm sorry, with the Clippers and Boston the other night. And I started thinking, dang man, I don't know if I want to see this as an NBA final, but at the same time, it's it would be competitive. Every game would be insane. Um, but again, I say all that, and it's like you just you can't count out LeBron, man. It's like there are times where they would look horrible in certain games during the regular season, and they'll play that same team in the playoffs and just run through them. It's
Oh yeah.
almost like he literally says, "I ain't showing you nothing right now. You ain't worth it right now. Come playoff time." He did it to Boston over and over again. He did it to the Bulls when they were worth something at the time. He did it to you name it. So can't count him out.
I mean, that's the thing with playoffs though, is like when it's the playoffs and you have AD and LeBron playing 40 to 44 minutes a game instead of playing like 32 to 36 maybe. That's a different animal because I mean LeBron may be 35, 36, whatever he is, but he can still like if he focuses on the playoffs and they don't have back to backs, that's a different animal. And also like they have just enough shooting where it's a problem. I wish they had gotten one more shooter. I wish they'd gotten Marcus Morris, but what are you gonna do?
I don't. I think so much of that is with everything that's happening with Kobe. It's just like anyone that's worth anything in terms of like basketball operations. They're probably super head in the fog, if you will. Understandable. It's just everything is just so it's so surreal and gut wrenching. So and it's the thing we still haven't even done Kobe's tribute. His memorial service hadn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
It felt like it's happened like 10 times already, but the official one hadn't happened yet. And it's like, Man, I think once that happens, I think you'll start to see things get back to normal, if that makes sense. I
Sure.
mean, the rest of the season is going to be dedicated to Kobe, obviously, but I think Memorial Service is kind of going to be the decisive moment to where, um, specifically the Lakers can,
Move
you know,
on.
yeah, they can move forward. Moving on is kind of a
Yeah.
stretch, but move forward for sure.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like I was kind of when they played the Blazers that first game back, I honestly don't even know how they did it. I mean, some people were surprised that they lost that game, but I mean, first off, you're in the midst of Dame having like an out of body experience like for a 2 week stretch. And then on top of that, I mean, that's just a ton of weight that you have to carry as the Lakers team that plays after Kobe's death and everything. I do want to say your memoriam piece that you did for Kobe was really really great.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, that was, and full disclosure, I'm a Jordan guy, so Kobe was one of those dudes that I despised as a player. Well, yeah, um, because it literally felt like he just kind of was spitting on Jordan.
Hmm.
Um, you knew it. Everyone saw it. He walked like him. He talked like him almost, and it's so crazy. And at the time when you're kind of people are, you got a lot of Lakers fans in my neck of the woods, and you got a lot of, folks that are like, yeah, you're just kind of blinded by, oh no, he's not Jordan. He's not trying to be Jordan. You're just hating or whatever. I'm like, no, you got to look. He's wearing the elbow pads or I'm sorry, the wristband up to the elbow and all that stuff. It's like, you got to be kidding me, man. So I had a hard time with him, but man, the day he retired, I felt kind of sad.
Yeah.
Like, this is the end. This is the end of. He's honestly the last of any of that era. That era of he's the bridge between Jordan and LeBron, but he was so much more from that era of, even though he wasn't from that era, he felt like he was from the
Totally.
era of, it's
The
like he was
isolation
so,
killers.
yeah, yeah, those guys that literally like, give me the ball and I'm going to win the game type players. And yeah, so it was like, okay, I feel some kind of way when he was out there, saying Mamba out, and you're like, wait a minute, he is out. This is it. And my God, I mean, the day that heard about his passing, I literally screamed at the internet. I went, no,
Yeah.
and and I jumped up and I ran out of the room and I told my oldest son, he's a huge basketball fan, and I said, all I said to him was, turn on ESPN real quick now. And he said, what's happening? I said, just turn it on now. And there was nothing. So there was a small part of me that felt like, okay, that was fake news or whatever,
Right.
or someone made a mistake. It's got to be a mistake or whatever. And I got back on the internet, and before I could sit down, I started getting text after text, and I'm like, everyone's like, "Oh no, did you hear? Is it true?" And I'm like, "Oh no."
Yeah.
And yeah, man, it was a rough one. That was a rough one.
I honestly like I couldn't believe it. It was I don't know. There was just something about Kobe where he's got like a lot of MJ and LeBron in him in one way, in the sense that, I mean, obviously LeBron came after him, but they just feel like larger than the game in a way that few players ever do. It's just like he feels like, you say Kobe, and it's like you don't need to be like, Kobe who? It's like he's Kobe.
Right.
That's just who he
Right.
is.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
it's wild, but
Yep.
well. So
Yeah.
do you got time for one more?
Yeah.
This is a bit of a challenge question. I was thinking about this while watching the All-Star game last night. It was really interesting to see who played in the fourth quarter, because it was just like they had 5 dudes out there on each side, and this is like who they knew that they wanted out there to like really win the game. And it was kind of fun seeing like Kyle Lowry out there, and he was just rolling out, taking charges and doing stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That made
Chris
me
Paul.
Chris
You
Paul.
know.
Well, yeah, I mean Chris Paul. I mean honestly, like Chris Paul, despite the fact that people think that he can't win a playoff game, is one of the stone cold killers in NBA history. That dude,
Yeah.
I'd rather have him shoot an elbow jumper than basically anyone shoot from anyone anywhere ever. That he's automatic from there. He beat the Spurs in the playoffs with that. But it made me wonder, Sanford, if you were challenged to come up with a crunch time 5 of basketball players that you needed to beat anybody, who would it be? All time.
Oh man, all time. I mean, off the rip, Jordan, Kobe, and I'm only saying this because I think defensively he would give me what I need as LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
Stone Cold.
Well, another thing with LeBron too is like he could be the facilitator for the team too.
Right, he can be the facilitator. I'm going to say something interesting. Let's put Shaq in there.
Mm-hmm. Like L.A. Shaq or Orlando Shaq?
Oh God, L.A. Shaq, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's not even a question. I was like, oh man, there's a reason why he left Orlando, because he just wasn't what he should have, what he became. But I'm going to say, even though he never won anything, I'm going to say Charles Barkley, because that guy had no fear.
Yeah.
He had no fear. He's straight. He's going to give you what you need. He might even be, because some people would say like somebody like well, when you got a team like that, you don't need a Rodman. You don't need because Rodman was a specialist. He would get you your rebounds. But I think Barkley was just as tough with that, and he had a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He could shoot. He can score. He can get his. When it came down to it, young Barkley, 76ers Barkley,
crazy athletic Barkley.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that right there, that team will destroy any team ever. So
the thing I love about that though is like you also have like the perfect person in there to like basically will everyone to do the right thing, and that's Michael. Because MJ, it's like that was one of the secret sauces of the '92 Dream Team, was the fact that like MJ was just like, Charles, you're doing what I want you to do. Do your thing. And like he didn't like that's like everyone was like the optimal version. I think at least in part because you had Larry Bird and Magic, and you had MJ just being sheer forces of personality on that team.
Right. And I didn't say those guys because I think if you got Kobe and you got Jordan, you don't have to worry about scoring. You don't have to
no
scoring at all. I don't think you got to worry about that. I mean, so yeah, I mean Larry and Magic and those guys, and again facilitating. I mean he's already, if I'm not mistaken, I think LeBron has surpassed, or he's getting up there. Being all-time assists. Can you imagine that?
It's insane.
He would be the all-time assist and scoring.
Yeah.
Possibly scoring. I think if he plays another year, he's going to be all-time of all of that.
Right. It's absolutely incredible. I don't know. I mean, let's look really quick. He's 8th right now. He's going to have a tough time passing John Stockton. John Stockton is way up there. But either way, I mean, he's going to end up way up there. I mean, the fact that he's probably going to end top 5 in both is, I mean, I think he's number 3 in scoring. So yeah, I don't know. That's a pretty good crunch time 5, I gotta say. But Sanford, that's all I got for you for basketball, for Bitterroot, for everything else. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting everything with me.
Thanks for having me, man.
Before we go, I want to give a quick shout out to a very special patron, Sean Kirkham, with another edition of Off Panel's Beast of the Week. This segment is built to highlight someone or something in comics I'm impressed by recently, earning them the position as the podcast Beast of the Week. This week, it's the only person it could be, Chris Somney. Not satisfied with drawing in just one comic in his upcoming Skybound series with Robert Kirkman and Firepower, Somney is co-writing and drawing another series at the same time at Oni Press in May's Jana and the Impossible Monsters. Somney isn't just one of the most talented creators in comics, but unbelievably productive as well. That's enough to earn him this week's Beast of the Week. So shouts to Somney and to Sean Kirkham. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with artist Sanford Greene. You can find him on Twitter at Sanford Greene and his work in Bitter Root at Image Comics. As a heads up, Off Panel is once again brought to you by Sketch.com. Check out the new version of the site and consider subscribing for access to all of the site's content and its members only forum. If you're a fan of Off Panel, make sure to check it out on Patreon. If you back the show on there, you not only support it, but you get early access to each week's podcast, access to weekly content, and more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Off Panel on iTunes or Spotify and give the show a rating review while you're at it. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by liking it on Facebook at /Sketched, that's SKTCHD, follow on Twitter at @SketchComic, or following me at @SliceFriedGold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Dan Lee, Cameron Schrader, Pensacola Pop Comics, Kim Eslin, Philip Mara, Christian Sheldon, Kenny Porter, Chris Pachalo, Torin Grombeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Harry Sayer, Waltz Comics and Books, Carl Mizell, Danny Ollie, Paul Salates, Litwin Studios, Akil Wilson, Nathan House, Alex Demetriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Troy Jeffrey Allen, Liana Kingus, Keegan Ray, Milton Lawson, Wesley Gipp, Sean Kirkham, Harry Small, Alistair Ross, Julio Anta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Reinwand, Connor Farner, Vita Ayala, Aditya Bidikar, Tara Ferguson, Dave Slusher, WMQ Comics, Akil Kokachi, Phil White, Sean Pinello, Ken Heidelman, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, Nick Michelin, David Kelly, Rob Wilson IV, Nick Polito, Owen McCready, Brendan Fletcher, Gary Maloney, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Adam Bogart, Xavier Files, Matthew Taylor, Tyler Turner, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Ira James Udaskin, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendricks, Steve Anderson, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Greg Rucka, Adam Highfield, Fiona Staples, Chris Hallrent, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Nemanakos, Norbert Nicolo, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Off Panel's theme song just for the show. Check out their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.